it's very...
Well, I remember when I was a student in your class, the very first day you came to class, we sometimes reminisce about that. When you walked in, you just sort of sat there and you said, well, what would you like to talk about? Because we thought you'd have all this stuff prepared for us. And it was the first day, it's obviously your first day, and you didn't have anything prepared, and our hearts sank. We thought, oh no, this guy had that. So, but no, it's okay, because then you said, what would you like to talk about? And we sort of thought, oh, we're sunk. Well, okay, let's give it a try. And we talked about, I just asked a question, I believe it was me who asked a question about one of your pieces, and I said, well, what on earth were you thinking, Mike, about when you were writing that piece? And then we thought, okay, now we got something, because you said, oh, yes, I can talk about that. So you went over to the piano, and you said, well, you know, one day I was sitting at the piano, and I played this voicing, and you played one of your beautiful Mike Gibbsian voicings. And you said, I just thought it sounded so nice. And then you just sat there. And we waited, and we waited, and we waited, and we thought, we're sunk. And then you finally got it. I said, Mike, well, what was the next thing you thought? And the next thing you said, you got up and you said, yes, well then I decided I'd look at that. And you wrote it up on the blackboard. And you said, I noticed this interval and this interval was kind of what was making it sound nice. So then I wrote this, and then I wrote that. And you showed how the compositional element of the whole piece was based on your enjoyment, your sort of oral enjoyment of that particular interval and that voicing. And then the method came in of the madness. And so you always have a method, but it stems from that oral pleasure of that initial voicing.
Oh, Richard, I'm glad you said that.
Yes. No,
because, you know, I've been asked a couple of times about writing a book about my methods, but when I talk to a class and I start to talk about this area that's just before music, before you start talking C sharps, which has to do with my physical, emotional response to a sound. And I see glazed eyes coming, and they don't want to get into that territory. And so then I meet another class, and I'll ask them, well, what do you want to talk about? And they say this, and I know my answer already has to do with this area, and I'm trying to figure out how can I say it in such a way that it's interesting. And I haven't found, what I've been doing is making it shorter than my spiel. So that before they get glazed and fall asleep, I can quickly jump back to saying what they want, which is techniques and things.
Yeah.
But I haven't quite found how to talk.
Yeah.
How to talk about it in a way that's interesting to the
Yeah,
so I've never written the book.
Sure.
But,
yeah.
but the thing is,
I will.
But what you've just said, you heard it.
Yes.
You've taken it in. So if you can, then it means it's.
I'm sure a few people have
but I want to do it in such a way that it's interesting to them. So I know I've got to tie a technique into it. Like say, I've got to say it in musical terms and not in. They don't want to. They probably want to hide from themselves.
If they have ears, I'm sure it's interesting to them.
Well, I hope so.
If they're lazy and deaf, then you've got no choice.
Yes.
Yeah. But let me talk a little bit also about what. Let me ask you this. Here's a good question. What was the most fun musical project you've ever done in your life? And you've done a lot of fun musical projects, my dear fellow. So, well,
I know there were a lot, but the first one that comes to mind is John McLaughlin's Apocalypse album. Actually, I wasn't at much of the recording. I was there for one day at the beginning. Then I went on the road and came back for just the mix. And I working on it though. Me at home at the piano and getting into the music, which is incredibly thrilling, full music. It was a huge thrill. I mean, not only because it was also for symphony orchestra with a large jazzy band. I mean, the second Mahavishnu band.
Sorry about that.
But it was fun. And working with John was fun. A lot of the fun had to do with discovering this music, which is a whole new thing to me. It's still rich to me. It still feeds me with ideas. John's, having 7 bars, 8 bars, and 9 bars, and then the drummer has 3 lots of 8 bars.
Yes, yes.
I mean, okay, so it might not be so grand, but it was very new to me, and it broke a lot of rules, which is what I love to do.
Right.
Anyway, so that was a big thrill. And of course, it generated a lot of interest. I got a lot of calls after that.
Oh, good. We like that.
So, John, thanks a lot.
Yeah,
Let's do another one.
As far as your compositional, your different compositions, obviously, all of our children are dear to us, but of all of your compositions, which was the most fun for you to write? Maybe it came out quickly, maybe it came out and you giggled. I mean, what was the one that you remember as being really fun to write?
Well, there's two answers for that. Sweet Rain, I think I wrote in about 30 seconds. It literally had been, it was like a boil, and it burst. I mean, it fell out of my pencil.
Right.
In 30 seconds. But I enjoyed Family Joy because it came out, the idea, I got one little idea which suddenly developed into the whole piece. You know, I moved from this chord, I don't know what to, I don't think in chord symbol terms, but
good.
C, F, B flat and C.
Thank you.
And for some reason played the same chord on A. And suddenly the piece, you know, I started moving the same movement with some half-step movements as well.
Right.
It's only those two elements, this chord down a third and then down it, sometimes moving another down another third and sometimes moving a half-step. And the whole piece came out. And then in a sort of release, it went into something that feels very joyous to me. It's just two sharp 9 chords. Anyway, the elements seem very simple, but the way it seemed to happen to me rather than me make it happen. And that piece has lasted. It's been interesting to me ever since. I still find it interesting. And also, I thought, from not being an improviser, at least, I mean, I still hope that I could play a B flat blues, but I can't do much else. So, so I thought these chords were not practical to an improviser.
Right.
And then Kenny Wheeler was on the first date and just whipped through them like it was nothing.
As he does.
As he does. And his improvising was always interesting to me because I could feel that I could hear him exploring the harmonic.
Yes.
And the fact that I liked what I had done and then to hear somebody really make music out of it, it's one of the most fun pieces for me. And then Ian Carkle said something about my music and mentioned that piece as being one of the most joyous pieces he's ever heard, and I really like that reaction. So that piece has fed me a lot.
Great. See, there you go.
I need to lie down.
Okay, you can lie down. Let me ask you one more question. One more question is, what are you working on now, and what's your next project, apart from being paid £100 million?
No, I'm not.
No.
You know, I've been working non-stop until the gig I had the other day, and I actually have a lot of blank space. But I am going to do some Upper Austria Jazz Orchestra. I'm doing a program we already did earlier this year, swing and all that jazz. And then I'm writing an arrangement for Tommy Smith's orchestra.
Oh, good.
Essen, Scottish National Jazz Orchestra.
Yes.
And it's this concert he's doing is with Harold Anderson, and I'm arranging a piece of Harold's for Harold and the Scottish.
Okay.
So, and I've listened to the piece, and it takes me into delicious territory. Not that I'm comfortable with it, but that I can explore it. And I have a nice chunk of time from now to September, so I can. I mean, it's just perfect.
So now you can start practicing trombone.
I can, but I've got to learn Spanish first.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I've been living in Spain 5 years, and I went to buy bread the other day, and all I needed to say was, she taught me, dos barras, two loaves.
Okay.
And she was almost cross. You've been here 3 years. This was 2 years ago. You've been here 3 years, and you can't. You know, how dare you? And she's right.
But do you know the Spanish word for trombone?
No.
Oh, well, okay, that's a tragedy. I think you should
That
at
is-
least know that.
No, but I should. But I actually got my trombone out there because I was afraid that the slide would have rusted
Yes.
altogether. And I couldn't believe how slick it was. After 5 years hidden in my closet there, I've got it. And so I did actually attempt a toot, and actually a note came out, awful
Okay.
note, but it came out.
Yes.
So I have hope, and I'm
Good.
looking for an amateur band
Okay,
in
yeah.
which to play third trombone.
Well, I think
And
I can.
after I've
provide
done that,
for you.
I'll audition for
Bandzilla.
Bandzilla.
Yeah, that's right, because you're going to be third trombone in
Oh,
Bandzilla when it starts.
It would be good to have a first, second, a third, and a third, and a substitute
You'll
third, and a
be
fourth.
substitute third. That's okay.
That's
good.
that's the. Do you know that it's the funnest place to be because you have somebody great on lead like
Yes,
Mark
that's right.
Nightingale, and you
Yes.
have a new hot kid on trombone.
Jazz chair. Yes.
No, who you mentioned his name?
Elliot Mason.
Oh yes, I'd love to meet him.
A god
And then
of
you have a
trombones.
really good bass trombone player, and then my notes to sound wonderful in
Yeah,
this
no
company.
matter what you play.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So
well-
that's the best place to be.
Yeah, good. Well, you've got the gig. You've got the gig.
Thank you.
And I'm sure your trombone loves you, and so do we. So thank you very much, Michael Gibbs. Thank you. The applause, right? Very good. And goodbye, and
Thank you
thanks for
very
listening.
much, Richard.